Okay, we're going to finish this unit looking at the equations of circles. So equation of circle means that if I was to type this in a graphing calculator, it will give me a circle. Now, remember how back in Algebra 1, you guys talk about parabolas, right? The quadratic equations that the exponent was to the second power. So if I was to write something like x minus 13th all squared, right? If I was to go something like this, y equals x minus 13 squared, it will give me a parabola. Remember, it was like a U shape. If I was to do, so here we have a parabola, here we have another parabola, and we have a plus in between them, right? Plus is basically I'm going to put two parabolas put together. So imagine I have this U shape and I have this other U shape. That will give me a circle. That's what we have that. Now my equation of a circle will always have a plus sign, not a minus, because if it had a minus, right, if the plus sign in between the parentheses was a minus, it will give me what we call the hyperbola. Now, hyperbola is like two U shapes that are not combined. So kind of like a broken circle that it's one half is fighting the other half. They don't like each other. Okay, so we do keep the plus sign. So when later on your homework, I'm going to ask you guys to write the equation of a circle, make sure you do use a plus sign, okay? And then this last number at the end is going to be the radius squared. So that's not just the radius, it's the radius square, right? We talk about radius in a circle. So I'm thinking for the radius is going to be a number multiplied by itself equals 25. Right? We can think of it, one number multiplied by itself equals 25. And if we cannot figure it out, just get the square root of it, right? The square root of 25 will give you the number that multiplied by itself equals 25. Okay, so I talk about the sections of a circle, what we're going to be looking at here. Now, let's answer these questions. Looking at question number 21, identify the centered and the radius of each. So I need to find out the centered and the radius. Okay, for the centered, I'm going to use these values in the parentheses. Notice how one of my parentheses has an x, the other one has a y. So that's going to give me the x and the y coordinates. The only thing is that the values that we see with the x and the y switch the signs. Okay, so my centered is going to be positive 13th, negative 13th. Notice how for each of those values, I switch the sign. And then my radius, we said earlier, I just said that 25 is equal to radius squared, right? The number multiplied by itself equals 25. So I'm going to say my radius in this case is 5, because 5 squared is equal to 25. Again, that number by itself at the very end is not just the radius, it's the radius squared. Okay, now let's take a look at number 22. The centered. So I need to find the centered and the radius for this one as well. For the center, I'm going to use the values inside the parentheses. Just make sure you switch the signs. So my coordinates for my center are going to be negative 15th, negative 11. Notice I switched the signs on both numbers, right? From positive, I went to negative. If they were negative, I would have gone to positive. So I gotta switch the signs. For the radius, I use this 4 at the end because I know 4 is radius squared. Right? Which number multiplied by itself is equal to 4? If I cannot think of it, then get the square root of 4. So in this case, my radius is 2. Okay. So first, I'm going to ask you guys to identify center and radius. But then here in numbers 23 and number 24, I'm going to ask you guys to graph them. Okay, for us to graph it, let me start by identifying the centered and the radius. And I have you practice on how to find them because they are useful. Okay, when we're going to graph it, we have to find the center and the radius. So for the centered, I use the values inside the parentheses. Remember, we gotta switch the signs. So I'm gonna say the center of this is 4, 2. Don't forget to switch the signs. Now the radius, I'm gonna use this 9 at the end. I know 9 is radius squared. So I'm thinking which number multiplied by itself is equal to 9? In this case, 3. Okay, so now let me graph this. The center is the point 4, 2. So let me draw the point in the center there. And then let me find a point on the edge of the circle. Let me use blue for this case. So what I'm going to do, since the radius is 3, and I know the center of the circle, from the center, go 3 units any direction. So 3 units up, 3 units down, to the right, to the left, whatever you want. So from the center, if you go up, there's going to be right there. Then just draw a circle, center at the red point, that goes through the blue point. Now we're going to do it by hand, right? We're going to work this by hand. What I'm going to do is from the center of the circle, I'm going to measure 3 units up, 3 units down, 3 units to the right, and 3 units to the left. And then, now that I have a good idea where the circle goes, because I'm doing this by hand, I'm going to do the best that I can, and my circle will look like that. Okay, let's take a look at number 24. Let's start by identifying the centered and the radius. For the centered, I'm going to use my parentheses. There's no parentheses with the x, so that means 0. For the y value, I'm going to use positive 4. Don't forget to switch the signs, right? From positive go to negative, from negative go to positive. And then for the radius, I'm going to use this 9, this number at the very end. I know 9 is equal to radius squared. So I'm thinking which number multiplied by itself is equal to 9. And if I cannot figure it out, get the square root of 9. Okay, so the square root of 9 is 3, right? 3 squared is 9, okay. So let me graph the center. The center is 0, 4. So let me put a point at that center. Because the radius is 3, from the center, let me go 3 up. From the center, let me go 3 down. From the center, let me go 3 to the right. And then from the center, let me go 3 to the left. And then I'm gonna graph this. And let's assume that egg-looking shape, let's call that a circle, okay? So let's assume that's a circle and it goes through the points that I marked. My last example here, my last things here, it is use the information provided to write the equation of each circle. The constant distance from each point to the center is called radius. Okay, one thing I want to emphasize here. The constant distance each point to the center is called radius. So here, I told you number 25, I said the radius is 5. But I could also have said the constant distance from each point to the center is 5. Right? So make sure you guys pay attention to that, because I can give you the radius in words, the word radius, or I can just call it the constant distance from each point to the center. So what I'm going to do here, because I have to write the equation of a circle. So I'm going to write, I remember the equation of a circle where 2 parabolas, I mentioned at the very beginning, 2 parabolas with a plus, united, equals r squared. And I know the center, the x value is positive 13. So my first parentheses, let me write x minus 13 squared. Right, gotta switch the sign. My second parentheses is the y value is a negative 5. So let me write y plus 5 squared. Make sure you use the corresponding letter, x or y. There has to be a plus in between my parentheses. Remember I said combine the 2 circles. We don't want a hyperbola. We want a circle. So it has to be a plus sign, and this is equal to, because my radius is 5, I'm gonna let this equal to 25. I go radius squared, so multiply the radius by itself, so 5 times 5. Now looking at question number 26. My x value is positive 3, so let me write this as x minus 3 squared. My y value is a negative 15, so let me write this as y plus 15 all squared. Don't forget to switch the signs. There's a plus in between the parentheses, and I'm gonna let this equal to 4. Now that 4, because remember I multiplied radius by itself, radius squared, so that's where I got the 4 from. Okay, there you go.